everyone. Good afternoon. Good morning for some. My name is Sarah Bryant. I am the Chief Marketing Officer at DBA Platform, where it is our mission to get you found. And we're so close to the holidays. I dressed up today a little bit, little Christmas tree. We're here today. Jan, you want to get some slides up?
Sure, I'll put it up.
All right, and we'll tell you what the agenda is. What we're talking about today is getting in that 3-pack, staying in there, raising your rankings, and this is part 2 of our Solve Your Metrics program for 2021. And today is really a walkthrough and analysis, the solutions to solving the problems that we talked about last month. If you weren't with us then, last month we talked about how to kind of analyze the metrics and understand where your locations are ranking and what causes that, and how to really dig into the competition, see where they stand, and really understand, maybe for the first time, why people are able to find you locally or not. And so that obviously rolls right into the next question, which is, okay, now that we understand what our metrics are, how do we fix them? And so today, Jan's going to take us through, there's actually a lot of detail about how to fix your local ranking, but he's going to give us an overview, and then he's going to show us a deep dive into a few of the most priority pieces that you want to look at in your locations profiles. So whether you're a novice or an expert in Google My Business, we've got a dialed-in education today. And the best part always is the Q&A at the end. But first, let me tell you who's here. We have Gilbert, who is our Platinum product expert, and also he is our VP of Product and Growth at DBA Platform. We have Matt Dickerson, who is our Marketing Manager and in charge of our webinars. And you've got me to help bring together the Q&A. So today, we're going to look at a quick review on Local Falcon scans, the rank tracking, and how to get your share of local voice, or your SoLV metric, how to basically pull that apart, understand what it is. And we're going to look at the difference between the maps or local ranking versus the organic rankings. We'll take a look at the different map factors, and we're going to talk about how to choose categories correctly, how to make rank boosting posts. And we're going to actually provide for you the DBA Pro Services checklist, which is a complete list of what we put together, how our Pro Services team gets our locations ranked for you. And so we're going to share with you step by step what they do. So before we get started, let me just point out again that there are a couple of features in Zoom for you to use. One is a chat function where Matt will put links and things like that. The other is the Q&A. So if you have questions for Jan during the webinar, or you want to submit something for the Q&A after the educational piece, throw that in the Q&A. Now, everybody has access to see the questions that go in there and can actually upvote them. At the end of the webinar today, we'll take those questions in order of most popular first, and we'll get through as many as we can before the hour ends. Okay, so with that, let me just reintroduce to you Gilbert. Most of you know him already. He is extremely well regarded in the SEO world. You know, he is one of only a handful of Google Platinum product experts in the world, and I know I've mentioned it before, but that's because he was recently promoted from a gold product expert up to platinum, and there's very few of those. He's the creator of Local Falcon, which is the original Google Map grid tracking system, which has a cult-like following. He's our VP of Product and Growth, and he is a senior SEO consultant at Toronto-based Sterling Sky. So welcome, Jan. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks, Sarah, for starting it out. Yeah, I'm going to go through it quickly. We're going to review, and then we'll get into an overview of things, and then we'll go into some really good detail to help you fix your GMB listing. So we started out last time talking about Local Falcon and how difficult it was to actually check your rankings, and a lot of business owners check their business, their rankings, and they're doing it incorrectly. They're not getting a good idea of or the right idea of how they're ranking. So that's why we use Local Falcon to help figure that out. And so once I created this system, it's like, well, we're ranking well, we're in the center where our business is located basically, but are you ranking well across an area, or are you not ranking well across an area, right? So now we have a lot better picture of our keyword coverage area, basically, is what I call it, the coverage area. Is it a good, or is it poor, right? And so, but the important metric really is not if I go back, if we're 1, 2, and 3, we're okay. But when you're 1, 2, and 3, first, second, and third, once you're in that map pack, basically, now the user, the person looking for service, is making a decision not on who's first, like it was in organics rankings. Now there's a lot more information. Google's pulling in the reviews and the location, distance, and other attributes. And now you're looking at all 3 at the same time. You're not just because you're number 1, you're going to be better. In this case, you can see really quick, the first one doesn't have any reviews. And so probably they're not going to get the first choice of the click or the call, right? So then now we start to think about other things. So first part, we want to get in the first 3, and then we start thinking about those other things. So we created this share of local voice metric, which basically shows you where you're visible, right? So if you're in the first 3, in the map pack, basically, so where you're visible, so share of local voice. And just to give you an example of why this is important, we're looking at 2 different scans here, and they look very similar, right? There's a lot of 3s and 4 rank placements here. The first graph on top basically is showing an average ranking position, and the one on the bottom is showing our share of local voice. And you can see this red line, which is representative of one business here, where their average rank went from about 3 to 3.4. So when you look at, okay, my average is pretty much the same over time. But now if we look at our local voice, share of local voice metric, well, they dropped out of the map pack drastically. You can see they went from an 85% visibility to like a 20% visibility at one point. So just losing that one spot made a huge difference on their visibility. You can imagine how many calls they're not getting and that kind of stuff. So it really helps you determine, is my listing okay for this keyword? So it's not just the average, it's are you visible, right? And so,
and really this whole thing with Local Falcon, I mean, the first thing you want to know is, are you showing up? And you're only showing up if you're in that 1, 2, or 3 spot. So if you're 4 through 20, even though it's nicely color coded and it's great information to learn that maybe you moved from position 20 to position 15, because you do have to make progress. But really, you're not showing up if you're anywhere after that number 3. And so that's what it's really telling you. So average rank position is cool because it's telling you over time whether your rankings are changing. But that share of local voice tells you whether or not you're showing up in that map pack, which is what it's all about.
Yeah, they're both important because you want to see the lift over time on average. But then when you get to those important spots, you want to make sure that you're staying there, right? So there's a lift. And then once you get near the 1, 2, 3 area, then you will say, okay, I want to make sure I stay in that area, right? So I just wanted to talk about that the MAPS algorithm and the Google organic algorithm are 2 different algorithms. There's a lot of overlap here, and even when there's overlap, the factors are weighted differently. So you can work on your website, you can, for the organic, but the organic algorithm doesn't take into account any of the GMB features that you're adding, right? There is a little bit of proximity on organic, but not as much as what would be on the maps. And so when we're talking about what to optimize, it's going to be different if you want to improve your maps to where you want to improve your organic rankings, but mostly it's going to be the same things. You want an improvement in one place is going to help the other place, but it may not help as much. So I just wanted to make that distinction that there's overlap, but they're not exactly the same. And so we know what to do to increase the rankings. There's lists out there. There's tons of things to do. And we have ours for the GMB here coming up soon. But the problem is, how do we know what to prioritize, right? And that's when we have to do an audit and we check the site, we check the GMB, and we check our backlinks, and we check all these things, and we do all these analyses to see what we should work on first. And there's tons of things, of details within each one of these things, right? I just want to give a brief example here of, we have 3 different sites. Let's say their website, technically they're all the same. There's no like technical errors and stuff. So if we're looking at these numbers out of like 8 out of 10 or 5 out of 10, I'm just taking 4 categories here, and really only 3 because the technical one is the same. We're just pretending, right? So let's say site number 1, their website content is not that great. They're a 5 out of 10. We have site 2 and 3, they're pretty good. They have a lot of content, they have pages, their title tags are good, things like that. Then we have all 3 sites, their backlinks, they're kind of okay. They're not great, they're not poor. And then we have a little bit of a difference here. Site 1 has their GMB profile is okay. They didn't fill out everything. They didn't do all the stuff that they need to do. They don't have a lot of reviews or pictures and posts and things like that. Site 2 is horrible. They did nothing. They never log in. And site 3 is active. And so what I'm showing here is that these factors multiply against each other. It's not just like, oh, we're missing some GMB reviews, let's get some. Like, you can have a great site, you can have a great content, you can have great backlinks, but if you're missing one element and it's like really low, then you're basically multiplying by 0, and boof, you're going to be low. So you just have to fix that one thing, and it like increases exponentially. And so you can see when you look at these numbers here where
that's a really good point, Jan, that it's multiplicative. So the synergy of everything working together is huge. If you have everything, it catapults you to the top. It's not an additive thing where, like, if your website's good, you score a 10. If you add this, now you're an 11. No, if your website is a 10 and you add another 10 to it, you go straight to 100. That's a great illustration.
Yeah. So, and obviously it's super simplified, and each one of these will have all kinds of things, and each keyword is going to have its own thing. But it's just an idea to get around, oh, well, that's not so important. Well, it is, because it multiplies everything else. So imagine someone's site technically is really poor. Well, that's going to be a 0, and you're not going to show up whatsoever, right? So you want to try to average your work across everything. And so the priorities are going to change depending on what you work on. It's not going to be get something to 100 and leave something, or get something to 10 and leave something at 1. You'd rather have two 5s than a 0 and a 10, right? So we have to get around our lists and our priorities to figure out what we should work on, and they constantly change all the time. But it's also to remember not to leave one of those things completely barren. You don't want to have a 2 out of 10 on your GMB profile, because it's just, you're holding yourself back a lot more than you think. Here's our list. So there's lots of stuff here, and we'll just go through them really quick. Obviously, the business name should match your real business name. Your legal name, whatever's on the signage outside or on your door. Your categories should be chosen properly, and we're going to go into detail coming up soon. Your service area as well, that should make sense. If you're going to visit people, well, don't choose a service too far. The service areas you choose don't have an impact on ranking in any case, but that shows up on, like, that little map has a little red area surrounding around it, so it helps a user know, well, can I come to my area, or am I 3 hours away and they won't come here, type of thing. Your hours are really important now, especially with COVID. Are things closed, open, and the holidays coming up? You want to make sure that you keep people up to date with that kind of stuff. Your phone numbers, depending on your business, a lot of businesses use tracking phone numbers for their GMB to know how well their GMB listing is. Sometimes you're just getting too many calls on your GMB listing. It doesn't make sense, because sometimes there's additional costs for the tracking numbers. But if you're not like bombarded with that kind of stuff, then you can add a tracking phone number there. Your profile short name, shows up, and that's something that Google added. It's not really, doesn't do anything too much. It's easier to share because it's a shorter link. There's a lot of things in here that you don't really see a reason why. Well, what do I need that? It doesn't show publicly, but Google wants all that information, and the more information you give Google, the easier it is for Google to help you, right? So just put it all in. Your website URL, and I always put UTM tracking parameters. That way you can distinguish between what's coming from an organic click to what's coming from a GMB click. Your contact website, obviously same thing with the tracking. There's product services that not every category of business will have. The attributes are really important now, because they used to really only be important for restaurants, but now there's, there's dine-in, there's pickup, there's all kinds of different, depending on your category, you're going to have different attributes available to you. They're not all available on the outset. Whatever primary category you pick, you'll get those filters. So, there's veteran-led and Black-owned and all that kind of stuff. Your business description, which doesn't show publicly yet, or it used to, but it doesn't anymore, but you never know, it might in the future. So put that in properly. Your opening date, and then you have your photos and videos, and we're going to talk more about that kind of stuff. Your reviews, obviously, you try to get as many as you can. Your Q&A, and I have a couple slides on that later. And then you want to make sure that you have your citations in place, because Google scours the web and looks at all the information. And if it can know that there's a business at a certain location, that really increases your rankings, because Google is just about data, right? It doesn't know that the business is there, but the same way a human would know, but it knows because it's reading information and cross-checking information. So the more information you have about your name, address, and phone number located at a certain place, then Google says, okay, we have 10 pieces of information from different websites. That place is really there. Rankings go up because it can trust that data. And so those are the checklists of things to do, usually one-time things. You're filling out your information. And then here's our ongoing things. So you want to post weekly, you want to add your photos, any coupons you have, any new promotions you have, you want to put those in your posts. Spam listings are a big factor in a lot of industries, especially for service area businesses. They can really make a big difference on your ranking. So you want to check for those and report those. And of course, your website makes a big difference. We're not going to talk about the website because that's a whole nother optimization. But your associated website does make a big difference on your rankings. And you want to make sure, basically, that every category that you have and every service that you sell, you want to have a specific page on your website for that service or product. So a specific page, and then when people do a search in Google, the algorithm will check the website, will check, oh, there's a specific page that has good optimization, the title tags and H1, and it flows through. So that's the best way to think about. Just make sure you have a separate page for each service on your website. And then the data aggregator. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, Matt put this checklist into the chat if you didn't see it, in case you want to download it. And obviously, all of these things are not the same priority, and I know, Jan, you're going to talk about the categories later, but I just was earlier this week writing a case study with Ryan in Pro Services, and he laid out in detail for a big brand the categories he had taken before scans in Local Falcon, and then identified maybe with you that the categories were not correctly labeled, change those, and then and then reran the keyword rankings after. And I mean, it was a huge change. It was a huge visible change, and obviously the client was really happy to see, and he detailed out exactly what he did. So I mean, these things make a big difference if they're not done. If they're zero, if they're wrong, they make a huge difference.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think I have the before and afters. I didn't have time to pull it in here. So just as an overview, so we have our GMB settings that count the most is obviously your location, which you can't really do too much about, but your category, your primary category is your main driver of rankings, beside your business name, your location, and your category. And then you have the behavioral signals, which are the things that you have to monitor, basically, is creating the posts, uploading images, getting reviews, responding to reviews, and your Q&A, where it could be a user-generated question and answer, but what you want to do is add your own questions and answers. And so not only do these influence the ranks of, not specifically for the keywords, but the clicks on all these things, all these elements in your GMB profile influence the ranking. So you could imagine two listings. One is empty, one has images and reviews and posts, and people see, like I showed that example where the first ranking there was no reviews. Well, is someone going to click on that? Eventually Google will learn, so if no one's clicking on that listing, we're not going to show it anymore. We're not going to show it in that place anymore, right? So the more clicks, the more interactivity you have on your listing, the more important Google says, hey, people are interacting with this, it must be good.
So when you say behavioral signals, are we talking about the behavior of the profile owner to put up images and posts and reviews and Q&A? Are we talking about the searchers who interact with that, or both? Like what is a behavioral cue to Google?
Well, it's more the second one, where there's users using maps and clicking on your listing, and Google is comparing that. That's why when you look in your GMB dashboard and it says insights and you say photo views, it says compared to other listings, right? You always see, it's always like, how many photos have you uploaded compared to your competitors? They do that on purpose because they want you to upload, because it's important to Google to want to have more information, right? So so not only does it influence the rankings, again, not directly, but it also is important for the user, where it's like, well, there's more reviews, or it's a 4.9 as opposed to a 3, or here's a post talking about exactly what I was looking for, or the weekly flyer for this week, I'm going to click on that thing. So you're ranking higher and getting more trust from a user because you're talking directly to them. So it does two things. So those things are super important. And the way things are going with Google is that knowledge panel just keeps growing and growing and growing, more information all the time. Eventually, Google is trying to not even have people go to websites anymore. They just want you to stay on Google, right? That's what Google wants. And so that knowledge panel will eventually, if it's a couple of years from now, become that main driver. And for a lot of businesses, it already is that main driver of leads, right? Let's talk about the category. So I was doing, and I think this is the case that you're talking about, where we had an audit, and they had their primary category set to produce market, but they're a grocery store or they're a supermarket, right? And so that's not right. There's a lot of choices. They had grocery store, bakery, produce market, catering, grocery, delivery. So all those categories were available in their GMB has it as as something you can choose. And I don't know why they had produce market. But when we did the keyword research, basically you go into AdWords, you could do your keyword research that way. You could look in your insights, or you could look in Search Console. Now, the difference between AdWords and the GMB Insights and Search Console is that Insights and Search Console are going to give you keywords that you're already ranking for. So if you're optimized for the wrong thing, you're going to get a lot of keywords showing up for that wrong thing. Whereas in AdWords, you can type in a root keyword like grocery store, and it'll give you a list of other things that are adjacent to that keyword. So I like to look in AdWords to see what was being searched more. So obviously grocery store was the most searched here. And so we should change produce market from their primary category to grocery store. And that's what I think you were talking about. It made a huge difference because everyone's looking for grocery store. No one's necessarily looking for produce market, right? So there's a lot of choices in some categories. Like in this case, here's a dentist. There's, so many categories they can pick. What should I pick as your primary category? And it depends if you have a specialty of what you're doing. In this case, it's a basic dental, and then all the other choose all the other secondary categories. As long as they're related, as long as you have something on your website that connects everything, there's no category dilution. So just by picking more categories, you're not diluting your primary category. It's adding, it's not diluting, right? But you don't want to pick two completely wrong, like separate things that don't make sense. Then that confuses Google. So just to make sure people understand that there's, if there's more than one category that makes sense for your business, choose it. You can always look at competitors and see what they're using. That also gives ideas, because sometimes you don't even know, because you have to autofill and you don't even know that there was a category that made sense for you, right? So the other thing I just want to mention is that there's a lot of businesses that have seasonal things. So we have a lawn company that also does Christmas lights. And so when it's the right time, you switch it, change your primary category to Christmas lights installation instead of lawn care, right? So change that over, because that's going to make the rankings blow up, get bigger for that primary category. So
there's a couple interesting things to point out. One is, it's been a while now, but originally Google didn't allow multiple categories, or, I think they had 3, and then at some point they opened it up to 10. So anybody who had completed their profile previous to Google expanding this section, they never revisited it. So we do find all the time that these are not complete, they're not right. So that's one aspect, is when Google makes changes, not everybody knows, and they think they're done with that preliminary fill out part, Then the other thing to mention is that, and I read the Q&A on these webinars all the time, there's so much fear about doing the wrong thing in these profiles and getting them shut down, or doing things that will actually hurt your rankings. And so I think this is an interesting point to press on, is that you can choose all the categories here. It doesn't dilute anything. It doesn't take away from your primary category if you add other categories, because that's the kind of question we get all the time, like, but does it help me to add more? Does it help me? And the answer is yes.
It'll help if you have a page on your website that matches that category name. It'll help even more. Like, you want that information to flow. You want it to make sense to Google. You want to put it as your secondary, but also look, when it checks your website, oh, look, it matches. And so that's 2 points of data basically. And then the algorithm gets more trustworthy of that information.
So Kathleen actually asked a question about that, and she said, so you're saying that each GMB category should have a correspondingly named page/content on the website. And your answer, Jan, would be, it helps.
Yeah,
it helps a lot.
For sure. Yeah.
Is content okay, or does the page actually have to have like a meta title, or an H1?
The page doesn't have to be like teeth whitening service, if that's my page, but it would be teeth whitening. You want a page, you want to build it out anyway, just for organic rankings, but you also want to try to match them to those secondary categories. Yeah, so again, there's a million possibilities depending on what categories you have and what kind of business you have. So it may not be every single but I'm going to say 95% of the time you want to have a separate page for each service that you do. Yeah, and one thing, I just want to make sure, there are some categories that are under duress. So basically, there's a lot of spam in those categories basically. So Google will lock down a certain category, like let's say garage door repair or something like that, where if you create a listing and then try to change it within a few months, then your listing will get suspended, and then you'll have to go through re-verification, and they'll ask for proof and stuff like that. So there's a few categories that if you start making too many changes, it'll cause a flag, and then they'll check you basically. So you don't want to.
So how would you know, Jan, like versus seasonality? You know what I mean?
Well, it's for very specific. Like if you're like, most of the time it won't impact you, but if there's a lot of fake listings in your category.
So some of those service ones where people try to create addresses and do
Yeah.
The very spammy ones
Yeah.
probably are flagged.
So, but if you're legit, you have an address and you have a signage and you have a business license and all that stuff, then it'll take it'll take a few days, and then you'll get your ownership back of your listing. So I wouldn't be scared of doing that if this is a really good thing, because obviously you're not going to rank. There's a pool company that's also a gym or something like there's businesses that have two things that they do in the summer and winter, for example. And so it 100% makes sense to change your primary category. So I just want to say, don't do it, but in very rare cases, you might get flagged and then you'll have to redo it. So don't be worried if you have a legit business and do it. It's still worth it. For sure it's going to be worth it to change that, because your rankings are going to switch.
Michelle asked, which categories are the main ones that are spammy? Is there a list of those, or is that Google, something we can put in the Facebook group or something?
I mean, I guess they're well known to the other product experts. Garage repair, most service area businesses. There's a lot of spam and plumbers and electricians and any business that comes to you. Garage door repair is a big one. Carpet cleaning. That kind
because
of stuff.
They're constantly trying to widen their service area, and really the radius for Google My Business is fairly small, because you can definitely have a plumber drive 45 minutes or an hour, but in Chicagoland they're never going to rank for that area. So they're trying to do that. So what they do is they put up listings that don't have real addresses and things, and then Google pays more attention to those categories to try to, because they get flagged so much.
Yeah, so they're locking it down. So, but again, if you have a real business, then it's not an issue. You can always, you just prove to Google that it's the right one. So we're going to talk about posts real quick. I have a bunch of examples. So we want to do weekly posts. Google says even in their own documentation, do weekly posts, basically. And normal posts expire after a week. So they're setting you up to do weekly posts. And there's posts are good because they have content and images at the same time. And so if you have a single listing, it's not too hard to do. You can post once a week. But if you have a lot of listings, then automation is really much better. You can just sit down for half an hour, 45 minutes, write all your posts, schedule them out with DVA, for example, and then you're done. You don't have to think, oh, I have to do my post this week. Oh, I don't have time. And then 3 weeks go by and you didn't do a post, right? So you want to update that weekly. There's a lot of different categories of posts. Anyway, I'm going to go through them here. So there's 5 types of posts that you can choose: event posts, news, that kind of stuff. There's also a COVID type post. So I don't know how long that's going to last, but they added that for COVID. Just want to go over some of these things. You can have a JPEG or PNG format. The dimension should be 1200 by 900 pixels. The guidelines say 750 by 750, but go bigger than that. Basically, here's this, 10 up to 5 megabyte for the size. Don't add phone numbers in your text because they'll get flagged. So if you're writing your content, don't write call me here, because they allow for that button. So it'll be a learn more button or call now button where you can put a link or you could put a phone number that automatically goes to the website or the phone number that's associated with your listing. So don't add that in the content. Google doesn't like that. Sometimes it gets flagged, sometimes it doesn't, but then 2 months from now, you'll be, oh, post rejected. Why? It's because Google did a sweep and cleared it out. A lot of times certain normal words get flagged. They just had an example. I just saw someone was saying there's a company, they were selling door knockers. So they did a post, door knockers, but knockers can mean something else. So it gets flagged. So there's a lot of words that you don't realize will get your post rejected because they have double meanings, right? So when you're writing, sometimes you got to think about that. Why did my post get rejected? Reread it and see, is there anything in there that the nanny filter will not like, basically. And UTM tracking on all the links inside your post. So when you have that learn more button and you're adding a link, UTM that so that when you go to analytics, you can, how many clicks did my post get? Don't rely on the Google Insights. They're not always 100%, but if you connect it to your analytics, you'll get 100% accuracy there.
Hey, Jan, before you go
Yeah.
on, I have an interesting question from Bob, and he's got a time crunch because he's pitching a potential new client as soon as this webinar is over. So, and this is a question about posts. He says that they're using the GMB posts like Facebook, multiple posts per day with a lot of hashtags. And he's asking, is that approach a benefit or does it hurt?
Hashtags don't mean anything in GMB, so that's absolutely useless. They don't connect to each other. There's no way like to click and get a list of hashtags. I wouldn't do two a day, once every few days, because you only can have, they keep changing the carousel, but there's only maybe 10 that you can have at one point, maybe on mobile, and on desktop, only a few show at once. So if you're cycling through them, then you're losing the old ones. And I don't know how much content.
I don't know. I'm sure everybody knows what a carousel is, but I'm just going to explain a little further. When you put up a post, that post lasts for 7 days on GMB, and you're done. Check the box, tick. You've got activity up there. You can post more often than that, but only one of your posts will actually display, the most recent one. Beyond that, they go into a carousel, so you can swipe or click over, and they'll be there. But there's a limit to that, how many can be in the carousel. So posting twice a day, I don't think it hurts anything, but it's more work than you need to do. You're not getting any extra benefit from it, right?
Unless you're recycling. But then if I see a post, oh, I'm gonna I think it's too much. I think it's too much. There's no real benefit that you're doing. I mean, that just seems excessive to me. I don't think you're getting extra rankings.
I've never heard of that, Bob.
Yeah, that's too much. Take the time to do something else that would make more sense, basically, in that case. So here's some examples. So here's like COVID. Here's some news. Here's the middle one is here's our service, and then on the last one on the right there is just basically a content post. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm just giving you more information. Basically, it just links to a blog post on my website. And so, because sometimes people run out of ideas, right? What am I going to post? I have nothing to post. I'll post to something that's on your website about content, right? So you don't always have to be selling. You just want to be present. You want to show that a user coming there has something to click on that's interesting, that shows that you're an expert in your field, why I should choose you over someone else. But you don't have to be explicit. You just have to be present and have nice pictures, obviously, all the time. That helps. So, news, services, informational. Here's Domino's has a coupon code, and you can select that in the in the drop down which type of post. And then we have the eternity set, just basically, well, if you're in a boring industry, what am I going to write about? Well, write about your reviews. Do a screenshot of a review and make it look nice and say, hey, look at our latest 5-star review that we got, right? So, or look at our award that we just won for whatever, this 2020 award that we won. So put your badges, put your awards, put your credentials. There's lots of ideas. We're in marketing. We have to be creative sometimes when you're in a boring industry. What are we going to write? What are we going to post about, right? So, but Google has all these different types of posts. They have this COVID type post that shows up higher on the GMB listing, but I don't use it. I don't like it because they rushed it, and so you can't add an image like the other posts. So who's going to click on that? You can give that same information with a regular post, with the informational type post, basically. And what happens when you use the COVID type post is that whole carousel disappear. Like you don't see the other posts. So it's kind of just like Google shoved it through. Let's just get something up there, but they didn't give it all the attributes of all the other posts. And so I don't really see a reason to use that. So let's go to your Q&A. So obviously the reviews are important. I'm not going to go too much into detail. Everyone knows, get more reviews and respond to reviews. If you haven't responded to your reviews, go back 6 months and respond to them, because people don't necessarily go back that far to see, but I would go back 6 months, because you're not only responding for the actual person that wrote the review, but you're making sure that if I'm looking at your review as a potential person, the client, Are they responsive? Oh, okay, they're answering back in a polite way. It shows professionalism, right? So you're responding for anyone else that can ever see your listing in the future. You're not only responding for that one person. And the Q&A, again, it's another user-generated piece of content on your listing, and anyone can ask a question, anyone can answer a question. So what you want to go in, and you're allowed to, as the owner, and you can't do this through the back end. You have to go through the front end of your listing, like you see over here on the right. You have to actually click that button and say, ask a question, and you type in your question, and then you answer your question, and then, you know, like your own FAQ. So you want to add that as your own FAQ, and you can upvote that question and answer. If you upvote it, I think 3 times still, it'll natively display in your knowledge panel. So you can play with that. Let's say you have some, again, another seasonal thing, or you have a special or something like that. You can upvote the ones you want and downvote the one, well, you can't downvote, but if you know which accounts you're upvoting from, you can undo that upvote basically. So you can mess around the order by doing that kind of thing. So that's important. And what happens is that when you add your own Q&A like that as your own FAQ as a business owner, you don't get all that junk. People sometimes, if you ever look at like these big companies, if you look at a Walmart listing or something like that, you're just going to see hundreds and hundreds of junk questions and answers. It's hilarious, some of the things that they did talk about. So that's another way to control your listing. It provides a clickable place for someone, and it also increases the trust. And because you're talking directly to them, they don't have to go to your website. That takes an extra click. You have to look around, answer them right there, right off the bat. Here we go. So in the beginning, we had that full checklist, and I said, you will complete your entire profile. And then we saw opening date. Well, opening date doesn't show anywhere. Well, it never used to show anywhere, but now it's starting to show. This was a limited test. It doesn't show everywhere. This was like last week it showed up. So there's a lot of information in the back end. Fill it out, because you never know what Google is using it for or when it's going to show up publicly. This, again, like I said, this is last week. It just started to show up.
This is a question we get all the time on every piece of information, where people are like, does it really matter if you have EXIF data in your photos? Does it really matter if you say this? It doesn't show up anywhere. Does it really matter? And then Google makes a change, and they say, hey, how can we display this relevant information? And boom, it's on there, and then you're scrambling.
Right. So I'm looking at this, and I'll be like, well, this guy is 7 years in business. These ones are less than a year in business. Well, he might have a lot of more reviews, but because he never entered his business date in that field, so Google is just using the listing creation date as that. Well, am I going to call a guy that's over 7 years in business, or I'm going to call a guy that's brand new that already has 300 reviews? Are those reviews real? And he might be in business 20 years, that you know, that office, right? But because they didn't fill it in, now it looks, it's giving me question marks. Should I even call that guy first, or should I call the other guy first, right? So fill in all the information. You never know when or where it's going to show up. There's all kinds of different platforms on maps. Things show up on maps differently than on desktop. So you check on desktop, oh, it doesn't show, but it shows on maps in a really, you know, a different way. So put it all in. Local citations. So we do this at DBA as well. And there's a lot of poo-poo on local citations. It's still important. I don't have the screens in here, but we've done lots of tests of, we do nothing to a listing. We just run citations, and there's a lift. It takes a little while because those citations have to get indexed and then incorporated and all that stuff. It's not like right away. So it's hard to measure against all the other fluctuations that happen. But a lot of SEO say, well, citations don't matter. But as I mentioned before, it's like the more places that Google can check information, the more trust the algorithm has that a real listing, a real business exists at a certain place. And so you want to make sure that those third-party directories and those citations get filled in. Now, you want to do the top ones, which is what we do. There's lots of old citations from 10 years ago, like directories that no one cares about, no one visits anymore, just like the heyday of directories. You want the main ones, and that's what DBA does. And the other thing I want to mention is that hardly anyone talks about like the GPS in the cars, so Garmin and Waze and stuff like that. They need up-to-date information. And so when you create information, you want to make sure that's accurate and up to date. And it's really important for when you're driving in your car, I'm going to visit a shoe store. Is it open? Oh, it says it's open till 6 o'clock. Well, if that information isn't up to date anymore and you close at 5 and now I just showed up at 5:30 and it's closed and now I'm pissed because you said it was open, right? So those GPS listings, information has to be up to date. So DBA updates that information for you as you update the hours in your GMB, right? When you connect it through DBA. So it's not just, there's some websites that you want to do, you want to create the citation and you can forget it. It never changes. That's fine. But there's other places on the web or in the real world or whatever that you want to make sure that it's up to date. So when Garmin says, where's the closest shoe store to me, when I type it in, and the last time that information was updated was 2 years ago, are they going to show you first? Probably not. They're going to show another one, right? So you want to make sure that your information is up to date constantly. And we got other things at DBA, other tools, a lot of stuff. We talked about Local Falcon. We publish photos. We publish the Q&A. And basically what we are trying to do at DBA is to make it efficient, right? There's a lot of one-time things. There's a lot of weekly things that you want to do. When you have a lot of listings, it's hard. It's hard to remember all those things to do. So, and the dashboard and GMB isn't easy because you have to go into each listing one at a time, do one thing at a time. Through the API, through DBA, you can make one change and boom, all your 10 listings, all your 100 listings are updated at once. I mean, there's so much time savings when you do it like this. It doesn't make sense to go through one by one anymore. So we're trying to build a system, a tool set that helps you be efficient in your optimization. And then that way you can spend more time doing the important stuff of analysis and checking and the audits and stuff like that, and not doing the actual work that just is grunt work. Log in, log out, log in, log out. You do it all at once. So here's a couple other things. We have our local rank tracker, which is the Local Falcon, local listings, which is our citations. We have our Swiss live inventory. So if you're a physical store selling products, you can connect this. And I think we're one of 2 global providers. We're special providers connected to Google to have your inventory show up in your Google My Business listing, direct feed. And so we're one of 2 global providers that.
Well, and we didn't talk about the new Swiss program today, and it's sort of like Swiss. If you have inventory, Swiss sort of trumps almost everything we said today in terms of its impact on ranking, and because it's, I mean, when you add your entire inventory to your profile, I mean, it supercharges it. So like Jan said, it is a multiplicative effect, so you can't have zeros in places. You can't not do certain things because it just kind of cancels everything out. But if you're looking for one thing to improve and you have inventory, Swiss is the way to do it. You want to pull all your inventory up into your profile. I mean, that thing is supercharged, and it's not expensive, and it's, Google wants all that inventory up there, so they're making it easy for you to do, because like Jan said earlier, they don't want you to have to go to sites to buy things. They want you to be able to see stuff on Google, stay in the platform, interact with inventory, and then go find it at local businesses, or buy it online through Google. So we didn't talk about Swiss today, but we've talked a lot about Swiss because it's just come out in the last 6 months. And it only applies to local businesses who have inventory. But if you're interested in that, contact us. We have a Swiss team who can go through your stuff with you and figure out, based on your locations, your inventory, what's the best way for you to do it. Cool. Jan, we have a billion really good questions.
Yeah, I'm done. I got one more slide. So okay. We have lots of tools. Check it out. We got, phone track. We don't talk about these other things, but we're trying to put everything at once to make it easy for you, basically. So we have Local Falcon, which is basically your measurement tool, your monitoring tool, your competitor analysis tool, and we have DBA, which is your time saver and automation and all that stuff. So pair these things together and use it to maximize the efficiency and your workload. It's great. So we got a Facebook group. I think, Matt, you can put that in the.
If you're not a part of our private Facebook group, please join us there, because you can ask questions there. You can get the recordings of these webinars there. A lot of experts are there talking about what they're going through. It's a really good educational platform.
Yeah, and there we go. We're done.
Yay. Okay. Yanisha asked, what is UTM tracking?
Okay, so those are extra things that you add to the end of your any website URL. Basically, it doesn't create a new URL. It'll feed into Google Analytics in a certain way so that you can sort it. If you just type in UTM tracking with Google, and there'll be a tool from Google that you put in your website, and you say what you want. There's a post on Local Falcon on UTM track. There's 2 good posts on Local Falcon. So check out that blog on the Local Falcon blog, and it'll give you a breakdown of how to use it. Because I can tell you what it is, but then you got to know how to use it the proper way and where to go and stuff like that. So
what a UTM does for you is it just basically, like, if you're sending all of your, let's say, ads to a landing page, you don't know which ad actually got the person to it. So what you do is you put a little piece of a few digits at the end of the URL for each ad. And there's a way to do this. It's kind of an automated process, and it just basically splits out where all your traffic is coming from when it's all going to the same page. There's a lot to learn there. Okay, Kurt said, and we get this question a lot, most of my clients have only one location. They want to focus on the entire city, not just their neighborhood. What are the best ways to expand their reach on the map, on the Local Falcon grid results?
So yeah, it's always what are you missing? What's the least of all those lists there? When you do an audit, what are they missing, right? So you have to make sure you got all the basics covered. Once you have all the basics, SEO stuff, you have content, you have a good website with content with good interlinking, you have all your GMB stuff filled out, you're creating your posts. At that point, if all your on-site is good, then you're gonna have to do off-site stuff. You need to go get backlinks. You gotta find local directories in your town. You have to get bloggers in your town. You have to try to get backlinks from different areas. You can create service pages for each one of those areas. If you're a service area based business, you can try to pull in as much location information from the other part, landmarks. There's lots of tricks. I don't want to say trick, but there's lots of things that work, that have little small effects that start to add up. But it's hard to just say an answer, because what's missing, and each category of business is going to have different ways to do that. But that's what I would be looking for if you're going to more advanced. Would be you're looking into backlinks and mentions in local directories and local news, that kind of stuff.
Okay, so Adam asked, how would you recommend a pest control service set up their GMB with regard to showing their location? There are many advantages to showing your location, and their competitors all show their locations. Okay,
well, if they're real, so you're only allowed to show your location if you have a physical signage outside. So if your competitors are doing it and they're at residential places, maybe they're fake. If they're not fake, you can still report them. They're not supposed to be doing that. They're supposed to be hiding their address, first of all. So if you want to show your location, you need to have signage outside. If you have that, then fine. Go ahead. And it's not like you get an inherent advantage. I think that when you do have your address showing, people trust it a little bit more. Oh, look, it's a real business. They have a place I can actually visit. Doesn't mean I'm going to go there, but they have a place I can visit. So I know they're real. I see a signage. I see a vehicle, a branded vehicle, that kind of stuff. So it increases trust, which means you're getting more clicks and stuff. So that's what makes you rank higher. But usually in service area business like that, you shouldn't be showing your address unless you have a place. So I would check for reporting them if they're fake. That's what the first thing I would be doing. Because that's a spammy industry. That's another spammy industry.
Mm-hmm. Delfino asked, do you guys have a tool to help one see how they score on website technical, content, backlinks, citations, GMB behavioral signals, so that we can compare apples to apples?
We don't have that, but there's tons of tools out there. I mean, Ahrefs and Moz, and they have all these website grader tools. There's a million of them.
Yeah, Delfino, they're super standardized, and I mean, a lot of times you can find places that you can even, you don't have to subscribe. You can check that stuff for free. So there are a lot of tools out there that do that already.
But they're scans. They're always limited, right? You know, even if I do a screaming frog and I'm checking my site, or a site bulb check, when I'm checking sites, and I go through it and they're catching all these things, but you can see right away, oh, well, that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. That's a false positive. There's a lot, you need to use your head to analyze stuff. So the tools are great at pulling in information. Like Local Falcon is great at pulling in information, but then you got to use your brain to say, okay, what am I looking at? How can I use this information? So there's tons of tools that do that, but it doesn't mean that they're presenting it to you in a way that's, here's the most important. They're not telling you what to do, and sometimes they're even wrong. So it's hard to build those things technically. So that's why we haven't done that. It's just, there's brain power that you need to analyze, right?
So here's a funny story, and it's based on a question that Brian just asked. His question was, does Google check now if you have a physical sign? So for these service area businesses, and this is a funny story. About 3 weeks or a month ago, our DBA platform, Google My Business profile, was taken down. Google took us down. And I don't know if it's because somebody reported it or what, I don't know. But the thing is, they took it down. To get it back up, we had to get outside signage, take pictures of it, and send it to Google. So I'll ask Jan that question about, do they check for your physical signage? But I know that they check on the way back up.
They only check manually if it gets reported. There's no automated check, like by an algorithm to check it. They only check if it gets reported. The algorithm says, okay, let's accept this edit. It gets suspended. Then to reinstate, then they're going to ask you for proof.
Yeah, and DBA, by the way, does have office space. We're not a local business because we service, you know, the entire world. So we're not a local business, but we do have a GMB profile based on our St. Petersburg, Florida office space. We didn't have signage. We had to get signage, put it back up. So they check that way.
Yeah. So that for that pest control, if your competitors, you know, you don't want to be unethical, but if they're breaking guidelines, they're supposed to have signage outside. If they're showing their address at a residential location, is it real? They're not supposed to be using their employees' addresses. You report them. They're breaking guidelines. And
you can check on this fairly easily by actually just doing a Google Street search for their address and take a look. Is it a residential place? Is it, you know, they're not supposed to do that. Everybody's trying to game the system. And unfortunately, if you're in those industries, you do have to police that a little bit because it is rampant and they will ruin your rankings, you know, so you do have to watch that. That is part of the job when you're in those industries. Melissa asked, is it possible to rank 1 through 3 in a city 20+ miles away from our office?
It all depends on the competition level, right? So I've seen.
Yeah, like if you're doing marine biology in the desert, you're probably got a big wide. Yeah,
it depends on the amount of listings that are in your primary category that are competitors to you. So that's a generic question, but yeah, if you're in New York City and you're a restaurant, you're not ranking more than half a mile away. right? But if you're in a small town, your restaurant can rank for 20 miles.
And the
So
way, Melissa, to figure that out is you can do a rank scan on what you think is an appropriate radius, and you'll see how the numbers fall off. Like you'll see that you're number 1 at your front door, and then somewhere outside of that you're going to be number 3, number 5. You're going to be able to see where it is, and by improving your profile that you will be able to expand that to some extent. And then there's a place where you hit impossibility, and that's where you're going to have to do ads. Yeah. So ads will take over getting you real estate in those areas. Yeah, but you'll be able to figure that out.
The Local Falcon scans are the way to visualize, and then you get a sense. I do it all the time, so you kind of know right away. But in general, I start with a 10 mile. If you're in a bigger city, start with a 5 mile radius, and then that's usually a good gauge to start off. And if you're getting all 20s, then maybe you got to shrink it. If you're getting all 1s and 2s, then you're ranking well. You got to enlarge it. So it takes you a couple 1 or 2 scans just to get your bearings, and then you'll get an idea, and then you can auto set that, and it scans every week or every month to see how they're doing over time.
I know we're at the top of the hour, and we promised to let you out of here at now. So if you have to go, please feel free to drop off. Join us on the Facebook group. If you're interested in Swiss, looking at any of the DBA tools, you can make an appointment with one of our sales team from Pro Services or from the Swiss team who can help you customize something that will work for you. These tools are, they're automated, they're leverageable, and they're going to change the game for you in local. And we know, Google has shown us, and we have lots of research to show that everything is only going to become more locally driven in the future. So, you guys are on the right side of figuring this out right now. If we don't see you or talk to you, have a great Christmas. And Jan, do you have some time to go through some more questions?
Yeah, I'm looking at them now. So I was going to say,
okay,
you ask in the Facebook group, but I'll go another few minutes and get some of these done.
Okay. I'm going to get some easy ones done here. Ted asked, when posting, should you post to multiple places like Twitter, Google, GMB, website, Facebook?
Yeah, if you have all that connection going in, like, there's Zapier or whatever, whatever way you're doing it, whatever system you're using that can push everything out at once, then for sure that's more efficient. There's no duplicate content penalty in GMB posts, so you can use information from your site and copy it. It doesn't work like that. So you can reuse that same information everywhere across multiple platforms.
Mike actually asked regarding the post, is there such a thing as duplicate content? In other words, can you use the same post on more than one GMB profile?
100%. Imagine a chains. Google doesn't want to hurt chains. That's like huge business that they make money off of, right? So if a Home Depot puts a post and it's the same post across 1,000 listings, Google is not going to penalize that. So they're not going to penalize, the small guy with 10 listings, the big guy with 10,000 listings. So there's, like I said, there's no problem. The
other aspect to that, Jan, is how we said, like, put up a post once a week. Doing it more than that, you can do it, but it's not going to help that. The other thing that I had heard, and I don't know if it's still true, is like you can recycle posts after a certain point. I think it's after 8 weeks. Like you can basically make a batch of 8 posts and just continue to recycle them.
Yeah, because people won't scroll back. If they're relevant and it makes sense, then that's fine. You just don't want someone to click on your listing. It's more of a user thing. You don't want someone to click on your listing and they see post A and then post B and then post A and post B and that's boring. It looks unprofessional. You want, if there's a user that goes through and they're looking through the first round of carousel things and they see 5 different posts or 8 different posts, they're probably not going to go that far back. Now you're talking a couple months. So you just don't want to be repetitive too close to each other. But
any thoughts on emojis in GMB posts?
I think they're allowed, so there's no issue if it makes sense. And if it makes sense to your brand, then go ahead. I think that catches the eye. There's more colors in there, even though you have your image. There's more there's more, emotion, whatever, go ahead. There's no issue for that. Yeah, if it fits your branding. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, less is more on GMB posts. The ones that we've seen that work the best in my experience, in Matt's experience, are plain background, kind of tile looking posts with, very simple. So this is a little different than what you're setting up in Facebook, and you have to kind of look at the composition of the profile and where your post sits, and you want to try to make that kind of stand out with an offer or something. We can maybe do a webinar more on that at another time. ATN asks, is there a correlation between ranking and weekly posts?
So it's not direct, it's interactions on your listing. So the more clicks, the more opportunity that you provide a user to click, then the better that the algorithm will like you. And so it's not going to, so, if you shove keywords into your posts and it's not readable, you're not helping yourself. You're not, oh, I'm putting keywords in my post. It's not going to help that way. It's going to help if you're talking to the user in the right way. Someone clicks on it, there's an attractive image. That's what helps. So it's not a direct one-to-one. It's put it up, user interaction, algorithm likes you more.
Kurt asked, our clients are estate planning attorneys. Would you recommend that estate planning law firm be the primary category with law firm being a subcategory, or would it be best to use law firm as the primary and estate planning law firm as the sub?
Well, if you're primarily estate planning and that's the only type of clients that you get, then definitely put that one primary. Yeah, definitely. And go on Local Falcon, do a scan before and then do a scan after, like 3 days after, see what your things are. So the thing with SEO is we're always testing, and I can talk in general, ideas, but we're always testing stuff. And that's why SEO in a way never finishes, because not only are we kind of tweaking with the algorithm, but the algorithm itself changes, right? So I can make a change on a page, and I went from 20 to 10, and then I'm going to tweak it again. I went from 10 to 8, and then Google is going to have an algo update, and I might jump to 4, or I might go back down to 20. I have no idea, right? So we're always tweaking and changing and updating and improving. It's never static. So the thing we do with SEO is everything is a test. And so you want to make a change, but you want to measure before, because I make a change. Did it help? Did it hurt? Well, how many phone calls did I get? It's hard to know, right? It's hard to track those leads all the time. But if I'm checking my rankings, yeah, I may not know right away because someone else is answering the phones and they're not attributing the leads to the right place, whatever. But if my rankings went up or my rankings went down, if I have those scans ahead of time before I make the change, then I can see if what I did made sense. And so before you make a big change, check, run a scan, make the change. Oh, wow, okay, it went up for this keyword, but I lost this other keyword. My rankings went down for the other keyword because I changed my category. Well, does that make sense? Am I going to get the right leads now, or am I not going to get the right leads now? So, and if you don't like it, switch it back. They'll go back to the way they were, right? So you're always measuring and testing.
Alicia asked, our primary key phrase apartment locator and apartment finder doesn't have a direct category in GMB. Any suggestions?
Is that a local business? It doesn't seem like it would be. You're only supposed to have a listing if you are technically either go to people's houses or if you're meeting with people in some form or the other. So if there's not a listing, it's maybe because you're not allowed to have a listing. So, online businesses are not allowed to have one. If you're just a website where you're matching people, then you're not allowed to have a listing. So I don't know about your specific case, but that's the first thought that comes to mind.
Okay, Alicia,
she's in chat. She said it's a local business with offices.
Yeah, it's a local business with offices.
I didn't hear a local
business with offices, and we meet clients in the office.
Okay. So if there's no category that matches, then you have to pick the best one. Look at if there's any competitors for that, then see what they're using, see if they've come up with any ideas. In that case, you have to make sure that your website is very clear on those keywords. Your homepage has those keywords, your title, homepage title has those keywords. Any sub-services have additional pages, because people are still searching for that service, but there's no category that matches that. So Google is going to look somewhere else. It's going to look to your website. And so if your website is optimized, then you're going to come up first for those kind of keywords, even though there's no matching category in GMB. So optimize the website for those keywords and the family of keywords, and that's the only way that you could do it. I mean, you could put posts, make sure you put your posts in and keywords in there and Q&A and all that stuff. But all the tests that we've shown is that keywords in the Q&A and posts and reviews don't have a direct correlation. So optimize the website in that case.
Graham asked, when trying to build local relevancy, is there a value in uploading geotagged photos of local businesses next to or around your business to your GMB, saying something like, we are located next to Tim Hortons on blank street name?
I've never tested that on a GMB. I mean, I've seen stuff on your website. You know, you create a contact page and it says, you know, directions from this landmark or this highway, you know, that kind of stuff, which helps localize the algorithm. I don't know if adding other business, so the algorithm can see images, can kind of place images. I don't know, it's Google Vision and Google AI Vision. If you go to that site, you can upload a picture and you can see what information Google has about that image. And so you can upload images to your GMB and it'll basically scan it and it knows what the picture was. But if you're just doing a local restaurant and I don't know if it's going to read the EXIF or it's going to be able to place a certain location. But if you do landmarks, that might help. I haven't tested it, so I can't say yes, but it's definitely not going to hurt. It's 100% not going to hurt you, as long as it doesn't confuse a user, because now you're showing pictures of different businesses. That might not make sense to a user. But as far as the algorithm, it's definitely not going to hurt, and it potentially could help. I never did a test on it, so I can't say with a surety that it's going to help.
Okay, Alexander said, hi, my client's GMB is perfect. It has pictures, posts, everything filled out. It has 71 local citations, website, and etc. However, his ranking is much lower than his competitor. Why?
Okay, so citations need to be indexed. So basically, you create a citation doesn't mean that Google knows about it yet. So if you need to check if the citations are indexed, and to be able to know, to quickly to know how to do that is basically you put the URL in the, you know, you're on the page of that citation, just type SITE colon, we call it site search, so SITE colon before the HTTP part, and it'll show you if you're on Google, it'll show you this, if the page was indexed or not. So you want to check if your pages are indexed. If they're not indexed, then you want to help Google find those pages. So basically you can create a page on your website and just list all your citations, put all the 70 citations, just naked URLs basically, and link them out, and then ask Google to crawl your page on your site, which you can control. Google is going to go to your page. It's going to follow all the links to all these citation pages. It's going to help index those. So I've had a lot of good, it works. I've completely switched, you know, indexation percentages by that. So that would be the first thing I would look for. Other than that is, I mean, it's hard to know the category and stuff like that. So the competitors, you have to look at the competitors' links. What links do they have that you don't have? Because maybe they have all the citations plus extra stuff. So how did they get that extra stuff? Look at the site structure. Look at your website. Do you have the same content? Do you have a good structure? Do you have in-linking between pages? Do you have a page for every service? there's tons of stuff I can go through, but yeah, that's an audit in of itself.
Yeah. If you really need help with that, Jan does, it's not the main thing that he does, but he does sometimes have consulting hours, and you can hire him to take a look at it and help you, figure out a case-by-case basis. If you have general questions on things like that, put them in the Facebook group, and, sometimes we can dig deeper there. Chris asked, are there repercussions from Google for having a false category listed to draw organic traffic? For example, in automotive industry, having Ford dealer when you actually are only selling Chevy. I'm in the digital marketing for this and see this a lot, and I'm not sure why they're able to do that. Possibly they need to be flagged for that. Thanks, I'm new to the GMB and process.
Okay, so I haven't heard of that one, is putting an extra, you're putting a category of something that you don't sell to try to get people looking for that other thing to come to you instead. That's what it sounds. Is that making sense to you, Sarah? Is that
I think so. That's what
okay. That's how I understand it. So there's nothing you can do actually besides just flag it. You can't even use the suggested edit to flag that, because you can't flag categories in like the normal suggested edit. When you go to a listing, you can't, they don't let you like flag the secondary categories. So you have to go to the redressal form. So Google has, just type in Google redressal form. I think it'll come up first on Google. GMB redressal form, that's what they call it. And then you can show that, fill out all the information and do that. I don't think they'll act on it though, because it seems so minor compared to what they're dealing with all the fake, completely fake listings, whereas this is just adding an extra category. I don't think it breaks guidelines like by enough for them to actually care. But I'm interested. Get me on the Facebook. I want to see an example just to make sure that I'm clear on what you're asking.
Okay, Delfino asks, when you say weekly posts, I've been doing this. Typically I use update and have also used the COVID option. Which do you feel is most appropriate for the weekly?
I like the update. Like I said, I don't like the COVID because you can't put an image unless they changed it recently. But the last I checked, you can't put an image on the COVID, and that really reduces yeah, it goes up higher, but then you don't get that. You don't click necessarily because there's no image and stuff like that. I like the update much better.
I know we still have a lot of questions here, and we're sort of out of time. So hopefully, well, here's an easy one. Brian said, what was that redressal issue? How do I find this?
I'll put it in the Facebook. I guess I don't have it on the screen here, but it's basically a form that you fill out to send to Google that says, hey, this listing is fake, or this listing is keyword stuffing. Here's the proof. Here's there, and you can put more information. It gives you a little text area that you can put in. It gives you to present to Google instead of just a suggest edit where you have to click through a certain way. So it's called a Google, just type in Google My Business redressal form, and it's pretty self-explanatory. Fill out all the information, and just remember that people looking at these are not necessarily from your area of the world, and so you want to be very clear. This listing is breaking guidelines. Here's the guideline. This is what they're doing. Here's a link to their BBB, whatever proof that you have, or the state registry. Put it in there to say this fake, remove it or fix it or whatever. So you have to put in the proof.
And Melissa asked, is home remodeling or remodeling contractor on the list of spammy categories? Because there's a lot of spam in my market. And I'm going to say, yeah. Yep, that's one of them.
I don't know if it's a duress category. Like just because it's spammy doesn't mean Google has locked it down. But yeah, that's definitely do a local Falcon scan and just do the primary category, and you'll probably see a lot of listings that are at residential addresses. That it could be, Joe Blow, construction company at his house. He might be a real business, but he's not supposed to show his address, or he might have 5 of his employees each have a listing all around town. So you got to scan and you got to go through them. It's time consuming. But when you look at the time it takes, well, should I optimize my website, or should I try to knock out the top 3 guys because they're fake or they're all the same person? They should only have 1, but they have 10. Well, I'm ranking 11th. Well, I'll go to number 3 instead. You know, you're going to get called that way. So you have to, it's hard to prioritize sometimes. Yeah.
Scott asked, when's the next webinar? And the next webinar will be in January. It's usually on a Friday unless there's some crazy scheduling. And it's usually the 2nd or 3rd week. But we send out emails. Make sure that you're on our email list if you're concerned that that you're not getting our webinar schedule. You know, reach out in the Facebook group. We'll make sure we're putting a new opt-in on the website so that people can sign up to get the notifications for webinars. So there'll be another one in January, and I'll make sure that we schedule more time for Q&A. It seems like that's the favorite part of these, and we'll try to get to everybody's questions. But until then, you guys have happy holidays. Jan, thank you so much for giving us your expert time again. Matt, thank you for administering another flawless webinar. And everybody, see you in the new year.